Hey guys, so this video is going to be about how to get your rating in, let's say, rapid chess above 500. So yesterday I played a couple of games against a player rated 430. Okay, this was actually a rated game, so I would have lost 16 rating points if I had lost either game. So I played one where I had the white pieces and one where I had the black pieces. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at both of those games and try and spot what is it that a 400 to 500 rated player does that they need to fix, right? We're not talking about getting straight over 1,000. We're talking about what is the most obvious stuff. What are the most obvious mistakes that are made, and how can you fix those mistakes in order to progress above the 500 rating point? So let's make a start with this game. So I'm with the white pieces and I start with e4 and he plays e5. So far so normal. It's happened millions of times. Right, now I play d4 and my opponent plays the knight out. So one of the most basic things in chess is to say which of my pieces are under attack, right? And are those pieces defended? So counting attackers, counting defenders is very important. So what we have here is a situation where black's pawn on e5 is undefended, but also my pawn on e4 is undefended and under attack as well. So we could actually find ourselves with a trade of pieces here. So this is not, I wouldn't say this is a mistake so far, because I could capture, black could capture, but then black could find himself in a situation, say if I move my queen to e2, that knight would be pinned, but let's see what happens. So now I move my bishop out to defend my undefended pawn. But now this pawn, of course, on d4 is undefended, and so black could have captured that pawn at that point, but instead decides to develop a bishop. But he's developed a bishop. He's put a piece onto a square that is under control by one of my pieces. So that piece is on pre, which means it can be captured. And if I get the opportunity to capture a minor piece like a bishop with a pawn, I'm very likely to do it. So I capture the pawn. Okay, so this move is simply a blunder, right? To move the bishop into a position straight where it can be captured is a blunder. So what I would do if I were black in this situation, so let's just flip the board, okay? So I'm thinking about moving my bishop out. Okay, now you can see what I would do here is I could even move it up this diagonal. Is it okay there? Well, it kind of blocks off my queen. Is it okay there? Kind of blocks off my d pawn. Is it okay there? Ooh, that looks interesting. Now, but before you drop the piece, you have to ask yourself, is there anything stupid about this move, right? If I put my piece there, can it be taken? Yes, it can. Okay. Then you might look here and go, well, it can be taken there, but maybe this is a better move. So you might decide to do that, for example. Yeah. So this guy has he's used 13 seconds of his 10-minute time, right? So the other thing is use your time. If you're playing a 10-minute game, you've got at least 10 seconds to make every move. Right? That would be 60 moves, and most chess games don't last 60 moves, right? So take your time. Before you drop the piece, just look and say, is there anything stupid about this? All right. So he plays that, he loses his bishop. Right, and now he develops a knight. This is a fine move. It's moved to a square where it is defended by pawns and where it is now controlling more of the board. It's good move. This pawn is not... and it's now defended. Yeah, it's defended by the knight. Okay, but it's not under attack. But he's blundered a piece, and that will cost him in the game. And you know, to make a blunder like that so early on in the game is going to make life very, very difficult. And the reason is that now he doesn't have his dark squared bishop, right? So he hasn't got a bishop that can actually visit an entire half of the chessboard, right? All of these dark squares are now unavailable to any bishop of blacks unless he manages to get a pawn to the other side onto a dark square and promotes it to a bishop, which isn't going to happen. Okay, so his ability to control the board, his ability to control squares to prevent me from moving onto them, right, is now reduced. He has less control over the game. Okay, so I move my knight out to c3, and he castles. Decent move. Now I move my bishop out. Okay, so similar move to the one that he did, but he dropped his bishop in the equivalent of that square where it could be captured. I've put my bishop on g5, where it's pinning his knight to his queen, so now this knight cannot move, right? Further restricting his ability, his options on the game. Let's see how we proceed. Now we have a pawn move, b5. One of the things that beginners do far too often is make completely unnecessary pawn moves. And this is an example of one of those. I think that maybe you could make a case for b6, in which case I might capture on there, and then he might capture back with the a pawn, then giving his rook a semi-open file. That would be absolutely fine. This pawn actually can be now taken by two pieces. So what's the point of moving the pawn there? In addition, I can take the pawn en passant, which is what I actually do in the game. He recaptures with the a pawn, and that's a reasonable move. Okay, so he's now got a lot more scope. So in the previous move, when the pawn was there, his rook only had one square to go to, but now it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, they're not all great squares, but at least they're squares, for example, where I'm not going to put my queen, because the rook could capture the queen, you see. This is what we talk about when we talk about control of the board. Okay, I'll develop my final minor piece, my knight to f3. So all the knights are now on their very natural squares. Okay. He now brings his bishop out to a6. Okay, so it's in a position where it's now facing off against my light squared bishop, and it is also protected by his rook. Now, consider though that I'm already a piece up in this game. We've lost one pawn each, right? But black has blundered a bishop. So it actually makes sense for me to make fair exchanges. If there's an equal exchange, it's actually better for me as the game proceeds, because if we keep doing that, I will end up in a position where I've got an extra bishop and a fairly clear board, and my bishop will be able to zip round the board and cause a lot of trouble. So it makes sense for me to exchange bishops, which I do. It also gets his rook off the back rank, and this rook is now undefended by any other piece. So I move my knight in here to d5. So it's looking at the knight on f6, which is actually pinned. Remember, I moved my bishop out there. So the threat here is that knight captures, because this knight can't move out of the way on the next turn. So knight captures, queen cannot recapture. He would be forced to recapture with his g-pawn, giving him double pawns and an open file in front of the king. So here is simply another blunder, right? So let's look at this again from black's point of view, right? We'll click back one move. Oh no, my knight is being attacked, right? Well, it is being attacked, but it's defended by a pawn and it's defended by a queen. So you don't have to move every time something is attacked. You don't have to capture, right? You don't have to initiate an exchange every time. And this is a really, really simple piece of advice, but it's a piece of advice that actually goes all the way through chess, right? A lot of players, really experienced players, master level players, can still fall for this mental trap that when something happens, you can think, oh, I have to do this now. And when you do that, it prevents you from thinking about other moves. Now, this is a very simple one, because so the knights come in, potentially attacking this piece, but so it's got 2 attackers, but it's also got 2 defenders, right? So it doesn't make sense necessarily. I'm not going to win material by initiating this exchange. Okay, think it through. Okay, let's say black does nothing, and it's white's turn again. Captures the knight, then pawn captures the knight, attacking the bishop, and the bishop has to move away. Bishop can't capture because queen captures, and then white's lost material. Okay, so does black have to respond and react to this thing? And if black does, do what we did before, grab the knight. I'm thinking of dropping it there. Okay, keep your finger on the damn mouse button and look at the board. Okay, is there anything stupid about that move? Oh no, my queen, right? That's what you have to do. You will get better at chess by employing that single tactic to get you beyond 500. So let's flip the board back and see how the game ends. So he captures my knight and I capture his queen. And again, what he could have done here, the first thing, look at the board. He's got 8.5 minutes left on his clock, right? Look at the entire board. Look at every piece on the board. There aren't that many pieces, okay? Which pieces on this board are undefended, okay? And I can tell you it's that one. That one's actually undefended. That's undefended. Everything else is okay on my side of the board. On black's side, that's defended by a knight. That's defended. That's not defended. That is, and everything else is. Okay. It doesn't take long to spot undefended pieces. But also, look, bishop is undefended here. So why not rook takes bishop? Okay. So first thing, stop. Look at the whole board. See what's undefended. See what's on pre, which means it can be captured. Okay. And then before you make your move, wait, oh no, I'm not going to make that move, I'm going to put it back. Alright? So I decide I could have just escaped with the bishop, but I'm massively up on material at this point, so I just want to, I don't want to finish the game too quickly, so I capture a pawn for the bishop that should have been captured, and he does recapture on this move, which is fine. Now I swap off another pawn. Okay? Makes sense for me to open up the board, because I'm up in material. I've got a queen and 2 rooks, so I'm actually a whole queen up. Knight comes in, so there are now 2 attackers against this pawn, so I just push the pawn forwards. Rook comes in and pawn grabs the knight. So again, what did my opponent just play? What has changed on the board? Oh no, my knight is now under attack. Okay, what is under attack? The guy's still got 8 minutes on his clock. Figure out what's under attack. Okay, he could have. So he couldn't have captured the pawn, but he could have moved his knight back here. Perfectly valid. Okay, so he misses that. He simply doesn't take the time. I grab the knight. He grabs the rook, the pawn, and again, this is the same thing. If I grab this pawn, what's going to happen, right? Oh no, my rook, don't do that. Okay, it's really that simple. That's what you have to do. Okay, and now he's blundered his other rook, and the game will finish very short. I just sacrificed my knight there, and that's checkmate right at the end. Okay, so let's quickly look at the second game. Same players, and my opponent is now starting with the white pieces. So let's look at the game from his perspective. I think that might make more sense. Okay, so he starts with e4. I play d5. He captures, which is the best move. I bring my knight out. He brings his bishop out now. Okay, so far kind of so good. This pawn is attacked twice, but he has no he could only defend it once. He could maybe bring his knight out to defend it, but that doesn't really defend it because there's too many attackers. So it was a gambited pawn anyway. All right, so now knight takes pawn, and bishop comes out to attack the knight. The knight is defended by the queen, so I'm not too worried about that. So I develop. All right, good opening principles. Get all your minor pieces out into the board as quickly as you can. Bishop takes, queen takes. So far, so good. Knight comes out. Again, bishop comes out. So I'm doing two things. I'm developing a piece, and I'm pinning my opponent's piece. This knight cannot move now without the queen being captured. Right, so I'm doing two things in one move. Now the knight moves. Why? I can only assume it's that same mentality. My knight is under attack. I have to move my knight, and then what can you do? The queen is lost. King captures bishop. Queen comes in with check, and we won't spend too much on this. G4 is completely pointless because the queen can simply take the pawn, and he's lost the pawn and he's in check again. Now the king moves. Now the knight falls. Right? You can see the blunders for yourself. Yeah, they're very, very obvious. The trick is to see those blunders before you make them. Right? When it's somebody else, it's very easy to see. Now black castles. The rook comes out, but this pawn's undefended, so queen could easily grab that. My knight comes in. It's protected by a rook and a queen. The rook zips across to the other side of the board for no reason whatsoever, and now the knight comes in with a three-way fork. So yeah, the game does go on a little bit longer, but there's really not much point to labour this anymore. And but the key thing to remember is stop. Use your time. The guy's got nearly 9 minutes still on his clock in a 10-minute game. Use your time. Look at the board. What changed? Why did my opponent make that move? Are there any of my pieces hanging that could be captured? They're on pre. And then finally, before you make any move, hold, look, and don't drop that piece until you know that that is not a serious mistake. Okay? And that, guys, is how you're going to progress from below 500 to above 500 and then beyond. Okay? Hope this has been helpful for you. See you next time.